Welcome to Keyword Crypto, everybody. That's JJ and Michael, and today we have Paul Sztorc, right?
Sztorc with the TS.
Sztorc. Paul Sztorc. He is the brains behind Truthcoin. So we did a episode last week, and it's the first interview we've ever done that we had to scrap just because we had so many technical difficulties. We couldn't. JJ, as amazing of a sound engineer as he is, he wasn't able to salvage it. So we're doing round 2 with Paul. And we also realized last time we talked way too much about Austrian economics, and this time we want to focus more on Truthcoin. So since we're a crypto podcast and you are working in crypto, we should focus on that more. So
hey, you
Paul,
guys can, as I said, you guys can ask me about anything or anything. That's what happened. That was your problem last time. Is you asked one like throwaway question about it, and then it was like we were talking about it for like 45 minutes.
Exactly. So we're going to try to avoid that this time. And if if we cut you off, that's the reason why, because we want to try to get back to the crypto.
Yeah, I should give shorter answers. That's something I've been thinking about for many years.
It's hard for us to get through something that is kind of very difficult to define. So, yeah. We'll be careful
Paul,
with the choice
why
of
don't
words
you introduce yourself and introduce your project, your crypto project, so that way the listeners can get a sense of who you are and what you do and why we wanted to interview you.
Okay, yes. Well, my name is Paul Sztorc. I have a background in economics and statistics, and my primary interest is this topic called prediction markets. And that is what Truthcoin is about, which is a paper that I wrote in 2013, 2014, along with some code. And that idea was for a completely decentralized prediction marketplace. Prediction market is sort of an unfortunate term for just a bet on something, a transaction that depends on something happening in the real world. But it's my view that basically all the problems that we now possess are due to a lack of betting either on corporation leadership or government leadership. So basically election betting or betting in corporations is basically the root cause of most of our problems today. That's not to say it will be nirvana as soon as we climb over this particular obstacle. There will always be infinite problems forever, and people will always disagree, which I think is healthy and human. But I think basically most of why we have problems today is traced to this thing, which is why I'm focused on it. And I wrote this paper, Truthcoin, in 2014, and it generated a lot of interest. And then I worked on the project. The project was supposed to be a sidechain of Bitcoin, but sidechains never really materialized as a technology. So I switched focus to that in basically 2016, 2017, and that was my project Drive Chain. So those are the two projects that I'm known as now as a proponent of prediction markets and sidechains, and I'm known for Truthcoin, Hivemind, and Drive Chain.
Okay, so then what's Hivemind and Drive Chain then? Because you just kind of threw those out there.
Hivemind is the attempt to rename Truthcoin, but of course attempts to rename things never succeed. So it's very interesting. It's a very long story that's not particularly, in fact, in hindsight, it's probably not interesting at all. But there are these different eras of crypto projects, and one era was one where everything ended in coin, and another era is when you were supposed to pick your own thing, and people were confused about it. Is Truthcoin an altcoin? Which is not, but people were confused about that, so I tried to rename it to emphasize that it would be a sidechain, but then sidechain naming became confusing with things like Liquid and federated sidechains. Then Ethereum Counterparty and a bunch of other people all claimed to be sidechains of each other. And then Jorge Stolfi wrote an article about his SOFA being a sidechain, and it all just became chaos. So
pretty much Bitcoin is a complete mess. Is that what you're
Truthcoin?
saying?
Yeah, it is kind of naming wise. Truthcoin sort of turned into my blog. I started a blog while working on the project, and they kind of diverged substantially. So I was like, okay, I'll make a new project site, and then I'll have Truthcoin. But it kind of doesn't matter because I never renamed the initial paper, nor could I. So it was like
Because there's no blockchain, kind of like, you can't change it.
Yeah, Truthcoin and Hivemind are like the same thing. I mean, I would say I regret trying to rename it, but I like that it has its own website anyway. So I don't know exactly what to make of any of it. But if I'm right and if I succeed, then none of this will matter. None of the names will really matter. Ultimately, it'll be part of some. See, because the understand the original concept would be I would just do this technology and it would be bolted onto Bitcoin in the form of a sidechain, which is still my goal. But you understand that at that point, none of the branding would matter because it would just be one feature in Bitcoin among a zillion.
Or in this case, among zero, since there are no sidechains.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, well, there's no sidechains now, right? And and how many features are there? That's also debatable. Yeah. But that was the original vision back in 2013, 2014, a long time ago.
Yeah.
So Hivemind and Truthcoin are the same thing. One is just rebranded, and Truthcoin is not a coin; it's a sidechain. Or is it a sidechain? Or is it a paper? What exactly is Truthcoin?
Yeah, Truthcoin is a paper, and then it was a piece of software that was released. But then the software kind of never left testnet mode or something like that. And now Truthcoin is my blog, truthcoin.info, where I publish all these articles on Bitcoin theory that go on for many, many pages. 40, 50 pages.
So Truthcoin is a blog where you write about crypto.
I do. I have a cool post about things like fraud proofs, proof of stake, proof of work, who actually controls where transactions end up.
Truthcoin as the software. Software, what did it do again?
It did a couple things. One thing it did was it had a peer-to-peer oracle system, so it would determine for certain events in the world, like elections or stock market prices, GDP, certain easily observed things, it would tell the blockchain what happened. And everyone could audit this, no matter how far into the future it had gone. You wouldn't need to so there would be like a process in the blockchain for determining whether or not Donald Trump is reelected later this year. And that would be in the blockchain, and that wouldn't be just controlled by one person who can flip a switch. There was this process, and the process is designed to be as reliable as possible. And so it's designed so that even though it's designed so that you could make wagers and transactions today, depending on this thing, that will only in the future be flipped to either Donald Trump reelected yes or Donald Trump reelected no, and all kinds of other things as well, unemployment rate, whatever. So that was one of the things that it did. The other thing it did was control the types of wagers that people make and organize all that information into markets.
So why would it be any different than, say, gambling on like a high school sports team, which is illegal because of too much outside pressure on students, and it even isn't technically college betting against the law also?
Yes, it's actually quite complicated. And in fact, it's interesting that I've thought the world we live in changes quite a bit. And in particular, FanDuel and DraftKings came out a few years ago. And I believe in 2018, there was a big Supreme Court case that actually de facto legalized some of this stuff. But I have to tell you, honestly, myself, I've tried to figure it out exactly what is and is not legal now in the United States. And it's very difficult to determine. Oh, my monitor just... Okay, it's very difficult to determine because, well, there's a lot of complicated state and federal laws that all interact with each other. And I have honestly no idea exactly what the exact status of all of this stuff is and how much it interacts with what state you're in. But there's been a long, in general, financial transactions and things like insurance have had a long history of being kind of overregulated. It used to be thought that insurance was bad. It was like betting that your loved ones would die and you were just supposed to trust the church or whatever to take care of you if you fell on bad times. So insurance was once stigmatized, and stock markets were once stigmatized, and we have a kind of, if you zoom way out, we have a long history of various transactions being banned, but people later deciding that that ban was just superstitious and kind of barbaric. So I hope that this is the next in the trend and that it becomes fully legal in every sense. But I think that what I would like is probably unlikely to get aggressively sort of endorsed by a lot of people for a variety of reasons, hence chasing it over to the blockchain world.
So this is actually really interesting. When we're talking about gambling and how in the U.S. we've tried as hard as possible to specifically define what is gambling, because, I mean, anything could be gambling. Anything that you put money on, that there's a chance, or maybe not even money. You can gamble pretty much anything. This thing that we've regulated because we don't want people taking advantage of other people, and we don't want dumb people making stupid mistakes. Crypto comes along and opens it wide up, because all of a sudden there's no way to really control except with laws that tell people not to do things. Does your project challenge that at all, or does it just add another complication that might, I don't know. What's your take on it? You said that you'd love to see it all become fully legal. Do you mean
I would.
Gambling? Like you'd love to see gambling become completely legal?
I do draw a big distinction between when the odds are fixed and when the odds vary based on what people do. So there's many types of betting. One is called pari-mutuel betting, which is like directly in the middle of this. Well, it's not really in the middle. It's really over more towards my side. So what I'm getting at is if someone offers you a roulette wheel, or they say we're going to bet on a coin toss, the odds are fixed and there's no real purpose to what you're doing because it's completely random. But what I would prefer are where the betting causes market prices to vary. So if a lot of people start betting on heads becomes more expensive. It goes from costing 50 cents on the dollar to 55 cents, 60 cents, 70 cents. And conversely, if a lot of people bet on tails starts becoming more expensive. So that is what I would prefer.
But doesn't that start to make money a driving force of your bet versus the overall well-being of the country you live in?
No, it's quite the reverse. The fact that the prices change, that reveals socially useful information to everyone in the world, even people who are too poor to even participate in the markets, or too poor to buy reliable information from Consumer Reports or from whatever, I don't know, factcheck.org or something. They give their information away for free. But this is more like that, where everyone can get the information for free, just the same way they can observe what the current prices of the Dow Jones Industrial Average or something like that. So the goal is to have the prices vary and for this to produce information that is useful. Whereas in gambling, usually the odds are fixed by someone, and then people just place their bets, and then the outcome is a random selection along that vector of probabilities, and then the event is over and nothing really interesting happens. So I do draw a big distinction between what I call gambling, where it has fixed odds, and what I instead I would just call markets or insurance.
Can you explain it to me in the terms of the 2016 election? So let's say I have 10,000 friends who live in swing states, and the odds are 90 to 10, like 90% to 10%, 90% that Trump's going to lose, 10% that he's going to win. And so I get my 10, 20,000 friends and say, hey, let's each put down $1,000 and we'll all vote for Trump just so we can become millionaires. We don't give a shit about the outcome of the country. We just want money. Like what would stop people from doing that?
Indeed. Yes. That's a very important point, which is that I don't want people to bet on who they think will win. I mean, I want some people to do that if they think that they have useful information about that. But my vision of the world is sort of confounded a little bit, because some of the people who I think followed me along this road haven't gone far enough, and they only took a couple steps along the road that I want them to take. And the couple steps are a little confusing because they lead to just gambling on who will win. But I want to actually do something a little more complicated where you bet on two things at once. And that lets you see what the world would be like if different people win before the election is over. So you can bet on you would really bet on whether or not Trump will win or Hillary will win, but simultaneously you'd bet on whether or not the unemployment rate would be low, or whether or not the stock market, when Trump leaves office, or when the next election, before the next election starts, or whatever time frame you want to give these people to make them accountable, you say it will be at XYZ level. The stock market, I think, would be a funny example, given that Trump cared about it so much and now it's crashed and now it's all this other stuff, as this drama is happening. But whatever metric you want, anything measurable, the point is you have that for each selection. So in our US system, you would really just have it for Democrats and Republicans because we have a very strong two-party system in this country. So you would have, if the Democrat wins, the unemployment rate will be 10%, but if the Republican wins, the unemployment rate will only be 7%. And then you say, okay, then you look and you have a whole menu of different metrics, and you just say, it's just like ordering in a restaurant or something. You just say, well, if I get this, I have all this combination. If I vote Democrat, I get this combination of things. That includes higher unemployment, so it's slightly worse. But if I vote Republican, then I have this other combination of things. And,
well, why would it be that combination when history has shown that that's not actually the case?
What this is, you have a situation where what people are betting on, I have to explain a little bit about conditional betting, and I think in practice, few people would need it to be explained to them with the right, user interface or the right image. Yeah. It would be easy for people to understand, but just on a podcast, I have to kind of explain a little bit about how this works, I think. So you would be betting on, imagine that you had a table that has heads and tails in both of the dimensions, and you have two coins that you're going to flip. Since each of those is 50% likely, then the table is filled with 4 25% measures, or whatever you want to call it, the likelihood. So you have heads, tails along the top of the table and heads, tails along the left edge of the table. Heads is 25% likely, heads, tails is 25% likely, tails, heads is 25% likely, and tails is 25% likely. Now, if the events are unconnected to each other, there will be this haze of equal probabilities. But if the events are related to each other, the probabilities will clump up on lines. So if it's actually the exact same coin that you're going to plot on this table, which would never happen in practice because it would be pointless, but for demonstration purposes, it may help. If it's, coin flip number 17 on the top and coin flip number 17 on the left edge, then the probability, the coin is either going to be heads or tails. So it will now be 50, 0, 0, and 50. So it would be 50. Heads will be 50. Heads, tails will be 0 because that's impossible. Tails, heads will also be 0 because it's the same coin. And tails will be 50. So you can see they clump up on a line when they're related. So you might say Donald Trump only has 10% chance of winning, but in this grid of 4 things, and you say, what's the likelihood of the economy being good, hypothetically? What's the likelihood of unemployment being below some amount, 6%? It's possible that of the table, the entire grid of 4 things, Hillary winning, Trump winning, unemployment being good, and unemployment being bad, it has to share 100% points. So maybe Donald Trump only has 10% chance of winning, but maybe the economy only has 10% chance of doing well. But if it's in a grid, you can see that they're actually the same 10% chance. And then the only opportunity you possibly have for the good economy would be to vote for Trump in this contrived example that I've just declared it to be that way. Those numbers, anyway. The point is that I don't know the numbers, so we need the market to tell me what those numbers are, because no one knows what they are.
Well, I mean, even the market is highly manipulated by the
yes,
politicians.
but this is the point: is that
because what's unemployment? Unemployment is unemployment.
Well, there's a Bureau of Labor Statistics website that reports different unemployment rates: U1, U2, U3, U6, and you can pick one. Usually, U3 is this one that's picked. You can go to bls.gov or something, and so that's what you'll say. Is you'll say later on, what will people say about the Trump presidency's average unemployment rate? And it will be, that's very easy to do. It's just going to a website and copy and pasting.
So it's not like
number
the day of the announcements of the numbers. It's because those always go up.
They
or
do
down,
revisions,
like a month
yes.
later, or 2 months later, 3 months.
Yeah,
later.
you could delay it for quite a long time because it's not going to matter. The point is that in finance, if you think something will be worth $720, a year from now, then today it should just be worth like 720 divided by some interest rate or something. So
how would Truthcoin stop? How would Truthcoin adapt to changes in how something is recorded? So, like, it used to. So
it won't.
Cost of living used to be based on food because food is the most expensive thing. But now it's and people are trying to shift it over to have it being based on housing because housing is the most expensive thing. So what happens if the cost of living actually did transition to cost of living?
Yes.
Based on housing, how would that affect?
Yes. Core CPI now excludes energy and food, and I think it also used to include rent and mortgage payments, but I think it now excludes those. This is something called implied rent that they do. It's confusing. But the point is that Truthcoin will say something like, between January 1st and April 1st, you must look up the BLS website.gov data for quarter 4 of the previous year. So we're in 2020 right now. So in January, sometime between January 1st and January and April 1st of 2021, so winter of next year, winter, spring, you're going to look up Q4, whatever it is, S&P 500 number, whatever the S&P 500 was on December 12th, 2020. And so if instead you want to look up Bureau of Labor Statistics, you have to declare all that in advance and say, this is exactly what I want the metric to show. And people will look it up on that date between January 1st and April 1st. And they will look that up. But what they'll do, you have a fixed question. So you buy this little slot and you ask a question and you say, I need people to answer the question between January 1st and April 1st. And then you get the answer, and then the answer's fixed forever. So whatever that's in the question, you got to put all this stuff in this question. You have like a long memo field, hyperlinks or whatever. But whatever you say, that's what it is. So all you do is wait until you're confident that, because they do revisions to GDP and to unemployment, but they don't keep revising them forever and ever. The revisions stop after a few months. So you just say, okay, if I want to make sure that my number is right for December 12 unemployment rate, then I'll just wait. And instead of asking it between January and April, I'll wait until April to June. I'll wait till the next cycle. So I'll say, don't answer the question until then. And as I've tried to explain already, it shouldn't matter because whatever this price is, if it's going to be something, $20, 17 cents, whatever it is, as long as people expect it to eventually take that value, its value today should be very close to that. It should just be the future value divided by some time value of money scalar. So it should be it's exactly the same. It should be almost no inconvenience. And you should have investment banker type people who are willing to buy one and sell the other to cash people out.
So do you want more clarity in the bet, or you're saying that just voting on Trump or Hillary is bad? You want
right. I always get this question, the manipulation question, and as you've asked, and it's if you're only betting on the winning, then it is possible to manipulate the vote. In fact, what a lot of people usually ask is they say, okay, I'm Hillary Clinton, because normally I talk to Bitcoiners and they hate Hillary Clinton. So they would say in the past, Hillary's evil shadow organization will cast a magic spell and conjure up a bunch of money, And then they will bet on Hillary winning, and that will make Hillary Clinton look more electable, and then she will win the election. And then after she wins, she will have even more money because she'll have won this bet. Even at 80, 90% odds, she'll win to make it 100%. And she'll have even more money, and then our tyranny will only deepen. But with this, they have to hit their numbers. So if you bet, what you are really doing is you're saying something like, if Donald Trump, what you're really betting on is if Trump wins, the economy will be good, hypothetically. Then if either Trump loses or if Trump loses, you make money. If Trump wins and the economy does well, you make money. And the only way you lose money is if Trump wins and the economy does not do well. And then you lose tons of money. You lose the bet completely. It goes to zero. But in the other scenarios, you're making money. So you're actually making this very interesting bet. And it only if you make a conditional bet and the conditional doesn't happen, then you don't pay. So if you say, I think Hillary Clinton will be great for the economy, I'm going to make this bet. I'm putting it all on. It's like, on roulette where there's odd and even and red and black. You say, I'm putting it all on Hillary winning and the economy being good. This complicated bet. Well, now Hillary loses. So we'll never know if you were right, but you earn money on this bet. So it's always drawing people in to bet more. And then Hillary Clinton cannot manipulate that bet unless she can also manipulate the economy. So she can spend infinite dollars and make it look like she'll do well, but then she will be elected. But her money is still not. She still hasn't won the bet. Her money is still in hazard. It's still. She has to wait until the economy does well. And then when if it hypothetically inevitably does not do well, then she loses all that money. All that giant evil money that she conjured up goes directly to, the libertarian Bitcoiners who bet against her. So you're transferring money directly from the people who are misleading the public to the people who called it correctly. So it is a kind of giant truth engine, even if only retrospectively.
So, and you believe that more gambling will be better for society?
Well, right now, I think it's too easy to manipulate the election results. And I also think most people know almost nothing about any of it. I've had people admit to me as I tour the world that they vote in zigzag pattern because they show up to vote for president and then they're like, oh, I have to vote for alderman and judge and all this other stuff, and people vote for who they think has a good name, or they just vote on party lines, or they just do random stuff. So in particular, the voter turnout for Congress people is very low, and most people cannot name 74% of Americans can't name any one of their congressional representatives, the senator or House of Representatives member. So I could put you both on the spot right now and ask you see if you can name any of them.
Karen Bass.
Yeah, so maybe one or two. Do you know the senators? You have to know all
Feinstein of the and Kamala Harris.
Yeah, well, good for you. Assuming those numbers are correct, which they may be, but 74% of people cannot, so they don't even know the person's name, let alone the challenger, or let alone any of the issues.
Yeah, I believe those stats. Most people. I know most
people don't know who the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is. People don't know.
I don't know mine is
anything, right? It's like, but that's very rational because why should you look into it? Your vote is very unlikely to be.
So you think that
pivotal.
Poor people who don't have money would somehow start to magically? I'm just pushing back. Magically know their congressperson's name because they don't have any money, but they're going to bet on it anyway somehow?
No, I think there's a big coalition of people who would prefer to be civic participants, but they stay home on election day because they know that they don't really know anything. And so they feel bad voting because they have shame. But instead, this would be as easy as, while you're waiting in line to vote, you just look up some stock market prices. This is as easy as that. And you just see you get two people, some have better numbers, and even better if they have different numbers, right? Someone could be higher taxes, but higher GDP or less chance of going to war or whatever, anything. You could just look this up, and then it's not going to be an ideal system or a perfect system, but I think right now you have something where, I mean, the voter turnout is extremely low. The margin of victory is extremely narrow. So there's only,
so I guess
it
the
only takes
question
a
is,
few votes. There's a lot of the uninformed people mostly cancel each other out. If you just had one thing in there in the world that had aggregated reliable information, it could make a big difference. And the information, what it takes to run the country today is much more complicated than the past. In the past, when the founding fathers set all this up, everyone was a literate farmer. They could read. 95% of the country were farmers who could read and write, and they read and wrote newspapers. And sending a newspaper was almost free. It was subsidized by the government. They had socialized. That's why you have second-class mail, first-class stamp when you buy a stamp at the post office. It's first class. The newspapers were second class because everyone wanted them to be free. I think but they settled for immensely subsidized. And so everyone had this big conversation taking place in newspapers, in text. And there is precedent for the decline of newspapers led to shorter debates. And then you had television, you had Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, and you had Trump and Obama and Ron Paul in the internet era. So there is precedent for when the type of media changes the way Paul, people vote.
So wait, Michael asked if you think more gambling would be better for
it's
America.
Not more; it's a certain type.
Okay, so you think so? How did that? I'm sorry, I think I lost the connection between that. So you're saying that the act of voting is like gambling, or you wish that there was...
No. It's again a prediction market. I think is an unfortunate term. I think I would prefer them just called event derivatives or something like that. That's what I prefer to call them in my own head. But unfortunately, this prediction market phrase has stuck. And that is what most people refer to it now. So, but it's really just you pricing on what you think will likely happen. Mm-hmm. So you were saying, if I think a lot of people out there now disagree, and they say, well, if we had Trump, life would be better. Or if we keep Trump for 4 years, life would be better. But the world's a very complicated place.
Why do you bring up an election as the analogy? I mean,
it works well. It's elections are. I think there's one of the biggest low hanging fruit is our economy is largely run by these people, and the feedback loop on removing bad politicians is very inadequate, I think. So
how does legalize some gambling or make more gambling possible, more different types of gambling, more complicated gambling? How does that then become a question of how we vote and our electoral process?
You would have this. People would be able to do this thing where you would be able to say, you'd be able to vote on this, what is called conditional betting, and you say, I vote on this particular combination of events. So you say, I think Trump would be better for the economy, but he'd be worse for something else. I don't know.
I think
so. This is all based on data. So maybe 50 years down the road, Truthcoin would have all this data that shows that pretty much every single Republican has had a recession in their time.
No. It's not. No, it has nothing to do with that. The point is, it's going to forecast lots of things at once. So when you have we have this grid. You're betting on two things at once, but you get two results at once also. So it adds up to a 10% likelihood that the candidate gets elected.
What's the whole point? Hold on. So what's the point if you don't use that information for future betting? Because then anybody can just say, hey, well, we all think that so-and-so is going to happen, even though historically, over the last 100 years, that never actually happens.
Yes, because it's not tied.
Republicans are fiscal conservatives, but they're never fiscal conservatives.
I agree, because this is not tied to any particular candidate or party in any sense whatsoever. It's no matter who the party is, no matter what the metric is, it will be an accurate forecast of how likely whatever candidate is to win, and of the metric itself. So whatever you're betting on unemployment, you'll see, unemployment in exactly 14 months is probably going to be exactly what this thing says it's going to be, 6.5% or something. And again, it won't be perfect, but it'll be the most reliable information.
But then
it'll be hitting all these numbers.
What's the point of buying? What's the point of making the bet if a year from now I can just go look at those numbers?
Well, there are a lot of reasons. One is if you think the forecast is wrong and you want to become a speculator. The same reason you would buy anything if you think the market price of Tesla stock is too low, you would buy it. If you think it's too high, you could short sell it.
Another reason is to hedge.
Well, anyone can. A speculator is someone in my worldview. A speculator would be someone who has obtained new information, reliable information. So, if people could somehow knew that the coronavirus would attack months in advance, they would, and that there was different markets for unemployment rate in quarter one of 2020 versus quarter four of 2019 or quarter two of 2020 or quarter three of 2020, they could say, oh, I know the Q1 2020 number is going to be low. Wow. So someone like that.
We had a way of knowing.
By doing that, right, exactly. By doing that, they would warn the rest of us, actually. That's really the only reliable way to take a big stance.
If only a country could have warned us.
I know. If only Chinese gene sequencers or whatever, right? So then, but this is what I'm getting at. This is a very different way of running society. It's one where people are not asked to justify what they believe, other than just by putting up money on it.
So what if these people who get the information have no money to put up on it? Like what if a reporter finds this information and says, "Hey, I want to do this"?
Yeah, right. So it is worse in that way. Although, of course, I would point out that along every other way, they're usually also the poor people are usually also less able to sound the alarm in every other, not just prediction markets, but also they don't own their own. They're not like Michael Bloomberg, who owns his own media conglomerate, or Rupert Murdoch or whatever. So poor people would have to either settle for trying to partner with rich people or something and saying, look, I promise you I've got some great information. You can make a lot of money. Please cut me in or whatever. Or they have to just settle for what they do now, which is just talking a lot and hoping that people will eventually listen.
I mean, doesn't that still put the onus on rich people being humanitarians?
No, it is not. I get this question a lot too. It is not a plutocracy. So this is not like $1, one vote. This is capitalism, where you have a lot of rich people who just say, well, I don't know anything about that. So they could buy frozen orange juice futures, or they could buy Tesla stock, but they just say, I don't know anything about that. So they don't speculate. Even though they could move the price around, they want to become even richer than they are, or at least not lose money pointlessly. So they just say, I'm not taking a stance. So a large quantity of poor people can move the needle, I think, pretty easily. In fact, as you know,
but doesn't history show that that's not really the case? That when rich people have a tendency, have the opportunity to make money, they use it.
No, I want everyone to make money. Everyone's making money in this scheme. Only the people who are gumming everything up by making loud claims and being wrong, those are the people who lose money to everyone else. But anyone who thinks the forecast is wrong, and or anyone who wants to hedge, is the second part of the answer to your original question. So if you say, I don't want the unemployment rate to go up, but if it does, if that bad thing happens, I would like to get cash. Then you can make a bet that the unemployment, it's exactly like insurance, where with insurance, you're like, I don't want to get into a car accident, but if I do, I would feel better if I won a giant pile of money at the exact same time. So that's exactly what car insurance is.
How is what you've been doing with Truthcoin and the blog and what you're trying to do? Have you thought about how that's going to change with this new coronavirus situation?
I don't think it really changes. I mean, in fact, I was just talking to a fellow Bitcoiner on Twitter yesterday. They wanted more reliable information about the coronavirus, because you have a lot of people who are virtue signaling or being alarmists, or people suppressing important, vital information. And he was like, why don't we just Paul was right. If we just had a prediction market on this, it would be better. I was talking to Francis Puyo and John Seth along these lines. So we would you would know how many cases there are. But people don't like cases like that, because there was something similar earlier in the 2003, 2004 called the Policy Analysis Market. It was actually sponsored by Congress and Department of Defense and run by Robin Hanson, the sort of grandfather of, or father of prediction markets, however you want to call it. He was running this, but it had a couple things like this, like war deaths in the Middle East and things, if certain things happened. And people really do not like that. They don't like it if it's even possible for someone to benefit off of other people's misfortune, which I can understand. But the point is there's a very, very strong reaction to that. And people lobbied to have the program closed down, which it was very, very quickly, like in a day, without anyone calling up Robin Hanson and asking him to explain himself. They just kind of closed it down immediately, quickly. There was a big overreaction to it. So I don't know about betting on coronavirus deaths or infections or things like that. People may have a very negative reaction to that type of thing. But it would, on the other hand, you wouldn't need to wonder, like, is Trump downplaying this? Well, I guess you wouldn't need to wonder. That was a no-brainer.
I'm wondering...
Are people overdoing it? And then you would know, and then which things would actually make a difference? You know, would UV lights make a difference? Would the vaccine make a difference? Which things would make a difference? You could do it like that. But again, people tend to become sensationalized over these cases.
Yeah. Those are the questions that I would ask, are like, to find out what people are thinking. I think you could use prediction markets like that, is to find out what the average person's actual questions are, or what they're worried about, what their fears are, or something like that.
Because didn't the prediction market that runs on Ethereum, I forget what it's called, but like within a week, is so and so going to be murdered? And they were
yes, I get this question too.
What was that called? Well, no, I mean that's like the thing is that you find out these really taboo things that people are interested in because it's taboo, and so I can see how that could. I can see how that would work in our favor too, to find out what people's actual
right were. Exactly. The problem today is that when people supply information, it is corrupted by their desire to appear a certain way. So when people say, I think the Democratic candidate would be a great president, they are saying that they personally care about poor people and they're not heartless, but they don't actually know anything about whether or not the Democrat or Republican would be better or worse for anything. And when you say that you like the local sports team, you're saying that you are committed to your community. But what does it mean? You don't really know. You're not an expert on whether or not your team will actually win the next game, or whether or not it's mostly a function of chance, or if someone has bribed the referees or something. Mm-hmm. So people have a desire to appear a certain way, and that ruins all the information that we get from them. We need an anonymous way. We need someone to be able to take the unpopular view, and we need a way for the expert who knows something. They know that everyone else is wrong. We need a way for them to mortgage their house and dump all their life savings into this to really send a much stronger signal. And then the people who are just kind of see, a lot of people, especially in politics, they're willing to offer an opinion, but they don't want any accountability for their opinion because they know it's meaningless. So if you ask people to bet, even just asking people to bet on who they think will win, this suddenly changes the person completely. They suddenly become a rationalist or something. You say, well, Bernie is trading at 1%, so he really can't win anymore. And then you have people saying, oh, he can still win. And then you say, I'll bet you 10-1 that he will not. Because I can bet then 10-1, and it's such that I lose big if Bernie does win and pulls the comeback off. But while I bet with them, I can then turn around in the prediction market and buy for 1 cent. I can buy 100-1 against, so then I can make money either way. So then people suddenly realize, well, it's only because Joe Biden cheated, or because whatever, or the process is bad. See, suddenly people, they change completely when they have to bet. They suddenly think, wait a minute, what exactly do you mean by global warming? And so I think that this is a good one. I used to use global warming as a good example because global warming is so vague. But in the example, I say, look, there's this NASA satellite available at this website. Every single day, minute of every day, you can look this up. And they publish reports that are available in text files that anyone can download of global surface temperature abnormalities. So all you have to do is say, do you think this number is going to go up or down? And now it's very clear. It's this NASA satellite. Then someone has to either say, okay, I agree with you. I bet that global warming is fake and the number won't go up. Or they have to say something like, NASA's in on the conspiracy, or this satellite isn't measuring temperature properly. So whatever, it actually helps a lot, because if there is a real disagreement about something, you can now find it, whereas before people would just yell at each other pointlessly forever.
So what's to stop somebody from eventually just saying, I'm putting $1,000 on Jamie Dimon being murdered next year?
Yeah. So I get the assassination market question a lot. And here's the thing is, you actually, what I described is better. The conditional betting is better in every way, because you can profit off of having the wrong person fired. Whereas in the assassination market scheme, you're paying money to have them killed, which is like gruesome. But the thing is, it doesn't actually really work, because if you want to do this inducement bet, there are a couple of fundamental problems with it. And I wrote a giant essay about this, which is on bitcoinhivemind.com. I wrote a sequence, and this is number 6 in this assassination markets thing. And I think it's like 26 or 28 pages long. But in fact, it doesn't really work.
Editor, Paul.
Yeah, I do, probably. I'm just determined to write. That is one where I really do regret making it long, because it makes it I just kind of dump out all the reasons in a big list, but really there's just 2 reasons why I consider it to be not, I don't think it will happen, or I don't think it will work. One, as I've already explained, is a superior option. So what people really want is to get rid of people who are making their life worse. So they want to get rid of a certain CEO or a certain politician. But I've already presented a superior way where you can make money in all the cases, except the case where you, in fact, were wrong, where that person was, in fact, the best person for the job, and they prove it years later. And you thought that getting rid of Jamie Dimon would be better for the JP Morgan stock price, or better for some other reason, but you were wrong about that. And in that case, you should suffer. You shouldn't complain about it either, because moments ago you were willing to kill an innocent man or whatever, because they weren't even the least bad person for the job. But the second reason is that the way this scheme works in people's heads is they say, okay, I'll bet $1 million that Jamie Dimon will live. Then the assassin somewhere will bet $1 against that Jamie Dimon will die, and then they'll shoot him, and then that person will win the $1 million, having only put up $1. The problem, though, is that these markets, anyone can participate in them. That's really the whole point, is that it's going to aggregate everyone's information. So if you make a big manipulation bet in one direction, $1 million $1 million on live, then if 2 people, the assassin bets $1 on die, but then some random second person bets $1 on die, then now they're each going to end up with $500,000. And in fact, so you kind of charge this battery by betting on live, but then it immediately discharges itself, because you have not only the assassin, but just anyone who thinks that Jamie Dimon is likely to be assassinated or die of a heart attack or die for any reason. The money will start to pour in on die, and that will drain all the money out of live. So it's like a big seesaw or something. That is not really a viable way to... I have actually thought about much better ways of building assassination markets, but I've never published any of them anywhere, and I don't intend to. But this is prediction markets are a very, very, very convoluted way to implement what Jim Bell once called assassination markets a long time ago.
How do you make them easy? I mean, they are convoluted. How do you dumb them down for people so that they know what you're talking about?
Are you talking about the assassination markets or the prediction markets?
Anything.
Yeah.
I mean, both. Well,
I think it's like when money is on the line, people learn very quickly. I think actually, I don't think on a podcast it won't matter, but
right.
When
just really fast, what information do you have that you can present that you think people are somehow smarter when money's involved? Because nothing in history has shown that. People are
when their own money is on the line. So people say, "What do you think of this?"
People look at the bet and they go, "Ooh, I could make $1 million if I put 3 down. I'm putting it there. They don't fucking know. They're not doing any research.
Yes, I agree with Michael. I think there's a lot of people who bought Bitcoin and felt like they were a lot smarter because they did, and they didn't really.
No, but it wasn't. Bitcoin was a good buy for almost all of its history, though. I mean, so they were sort of correct.
Well, most people bought Bitcoin when it was not a good buy.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what society shows us, is that the majority of people buy stuff when it's not a good time to buy, and they sell stuff when it's not a good time to sell.
I see. Well, this is a little different. This isn't about normal asset trading, which would be true of Bitcoin, true of the stock market. It was true of real estate for a while, where people get FOMO, the infamous fear of missing out, and then especially I think as Warren Buffett put it, or someone, they said the worst feeling of all in all of human psychology is watching someone else get rich or something, and that is like the most motivating thing. And so then you copy what that person is doing, and that, I think, that's the case for a lot of anything that has an asset with prices. But I don't.
With this is an asset with a price, though.
Yeah, but this is the only thing that is counteracting that, because with this everything is balanced in my scheme. You have to either vote on yes or no, and they're inverse of each other, or you have to vote on 4 things at once, in which case you have yes, yes, no, yes, or no, no, and then you have high, low. You have other things. It doesn't have to be yes, no. Yes, no would be a 0 and 1, but then you can have a continuum of values from 0 to 1. But the point is, you have one thing, and there's no, as you gain, other people will be losing. So this is completely symmetric in every sense.
So but that's one price people goes are up, rational, and what economics
this is not. This is just a mathematical feature of the system.
No, I know, but people are going to be picking. It's almost like picking squares for the Super Bowl. It's just like fourth quarter, 37 points, blah blah. Like people don't
pick
know.
The squares before you even know. No, but that is when people. That is entertainment, so that is consumption. And some people will do that in this, which is actually a good thing, because those people will bet and they'll add a little bit of liquidity to all the edges. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that in general, but this is actually better, because the market prices will change, and those people will always get a fair deal, unlike in a casino where they'll always get an unfair deal. But I'm not exactly sure how to address your original complaint. Was that people get dumber when their own money is on the line? But I don't think it's even possible.
No, I'm not saying they get dumber. I'm just saying they don't get smarter.
I think there's a big selection effect.
They've shown over the history of time that no matter how many times you tell them Vegas is a rigged game, they continue to go put their money down. And
when people go to Vegas, that's consumption. They aren't really investing. And the investors don't go to Vegas, right? The investors stay on Wall Street or Chicago Board of Options Exchange or something. They stay in London.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. But so I'm saying is like, so you're saying
you don't go to Vegas to
something
invest.
For everybody.
You go to Vegas for fun, to have a fun time, and you're going to lose. A lot of people. It's true that many people don't, and it is also true that something like exactly 1% of the population has gambling addiction problems, and I don't want to ignore all of what you're saying.
That number's low.
Oh, I get it from the DSM-5 or whatever. So I do a lot of research for my, but I don't know exactly how people can have various. I think you may be.
JJ knows my stance on Chinese people and gambling.
Yeah, there's a selection effect where the people who are bad, maybe many people in a casino. You understand? Because maybe only 1% of the population is in a casino, and half of those are half of the problem gamblers, and half of those are regular
gamblers.
But
what you want to do is open up Vegas to everybody sitting in their home, so anybody can now gamble in Vegas from the comfort of their home.
Well, I suppose in a way that's true, but it's also true that they could already buy a different stock market or different index funds. They can already do quite a bit of gambling. They could gamble with their friends. They can now do FanDuel and DraftKings, as I mentioned before. So people can already do quite a bit of gambling. This is more about a specific type of betting. Specific type.
So I have a side chain question, but I want to give if JJ has any other questions about this before I shift.
No, let's talk about side chains.
So you mentioned something about, I forget what it was, but mainly, I guess the question is, at what point you still seem really pro BTC, and I don't understand why when every single step of the way
works.
they've kind of blocked you from experimenting and
it's true.
doing things. It's like where's the love? Like, why is the love still there?
Well, that's a very good point, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's completely the case that every step of the way. I mean, I asked for feedback, and I got what I asked for, and people are they love to outsmart each other with bizarre, extremely harebrained criticisms that outdo each other in terms of being unrealistic and things like that. So I did get a lot of good attention. I mean, I was allowed to present on sidechain scaling at Scaling Bitcoin 3 back in 2016, and a lot of people. I had a discussion on the mailing list. I got BIP numbers. It took a very long time. A lot of it was my own terrible writing. But
do you see what I mean? It's like you're saying, I got permission to speak at this thing, or I got permission to showcase my thing. I don't have permission to actually make this sidechain thing. It's like versus something where Ethereum, you're like, I have this idea, I'm going to put it out there, I'm going to see if it sticks and let people test it out and see if it works. Like I guess that's my question is it's like you have all these hoops you have to jump through and all these gatekeepers who are blocking you from just putting it out there and seeing if it actually works.
Yes, and the irony, of course, is that if you had sidechains, you could try out new pieces of software. It would be like Ethereum where you could try out new pieces of software without changing any code in Bitcoin Core. People could just have their own sidechain, which would be their own piece of software. And they could do whatever they want over there and make all kinds of dumb mistakes and implement proof of stake or implement anything that they like on their sidechain or implement nothing or just make it delete money at random. They can do whatever they like over there. So ironically, this would be the one thing that you would need. There's a lot permission of that. Part of it is that I'm not sure how great of a job I've done at explaining it, even though I tried very hard. Another thing, though, is that I think politically it's difficult because you had this war between large blockers and small blockers, and this allows both groups to get what they want.
We lost Paul.
Neither group. I thought when I proposed it, both groups would then support it, and it would then be the.
There he is.
Hold on, hey Paul.
Hey Paul. Yes. Paul. Back up for a second. We lost you for a second.
You cut out for like 2 minutes or a minute. So.
I see. Interesting. What did you hear last?
You were last thing. Well, let's see. The last thing you said was that you. Well.
Shit. Turn on the tip of my tongue.
Lost our thought too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were asking me about.
Maybe we can try to wrap this up since we've been recording for an hour. Let's. So BTC, why you're still using BTC when nothing seems to work on it?
Well, a lot of people.
I think I'm a big what you want to do.
I think it. Well, it does take a very long time. To do anything in BTC, which is a drawback of BTC, but which is also something that people like about it.
So really fast. Hold on. Why don't we do a predictive market right now about whether BTC will ever allow a sidechain for you to implement Truthcoin?
Yes, you could.
I think that would be a great example.
A lot of people are skeptical that they ever will.
Yeah.
What do you think? 2 years from now?
So, but at what point do you say...
We need some conditions, right? Like it depends on if the other thing happens, if this, that, and the other thing happens.
Well, let's just say if they accept sidechains and then they let you implement your sidechain.
But you see, this is the problem: is that as I've just explained, my answer will be polluted by the way I want other people to see me. You need me to be able to bet anonymously. One way or another, that will give you the real information.
Yeah, I mean I
I'd be going against myself if I even argued for any position or justified it at all.
Yeah,
you need the anonymous. You need this pure anonymous, pure selfish people trying to make money on whether or not. But yeah, I think that would be great, very informative for people. There are many people out there who are convinced that I am wasting my time with BTC crowd. Even though I've been a part of that community for a very long time. Yeah,
it just seems like you're the guy that they let into the party if they have an extra space open, and you seem too. No. I mean, you just seem too smart to be wasting your time spinning your wheels on a place that's not even letting you implement your ideas.
Yeah, well, a lot of the people in BTC think I'm very smart too, and they invite me to lots of parties and tell me how smart I am there.
But they don't let you do what you want to do.
But they don't let you do what you want to do.
Well, a part of it is that I haven't finished it also. We're still debugging it. So it's not as though it was finished perfectly years ago. And we're still constantly debugging it. And so it's a slow process. It's not as though it would obviously, what I expected was more people to help with it and agree that it was a good idea. But there was this disagreement between large blockers and small blockers. And I thought, okay, here's something that will work for both groups. At the large blockers, it will work for them and Roger Ver, and the small blockers, it will work for Luke Dash Jr. And so, but what actually happened was everyone was like, how dare you side with them? And they both hated it, even though they both were convinced at the time, this was like 2016. They were like, of course, if it comes to a battle, we'll win. And obviously there can be only one winner. And Segwit2x demonstrated vaguely that the small blockers won at least, the first round. So that is that's a little bit about how that story went.
I still think you should move to a different place that lets you unfold your wings and fly.
Well, another thing is that I'm a big believer in
try it.
Network effects, and with Bitcoin, you obviously have lots of smart technical people, but also most of the market cap and most of the transaction volume. So it's kind of like, yeah, but I agree.
I mean, at a certain point, it's got to be like school, where you have to have a place where you can put stuff out there and let it fall flat and see where it didn't work. And so it's like at a certain point, you guys can just talk it to death. And if it sounds like the BTC core people are talking it to death.
Yeah, I have criticized the Bitcoin community for this quite a bit, and they say things. I almost say like they don't understand open source really. I mean, they know the words but not the tune, because de facto Bitcoin is open source, but only in a superficial sense, that it's not, you can't really, which is in a way a good thing, but that is why sidechains are so important, because you have the original protocols locked down, and then the experimental stuff only takes place in these opt-in satellites that are orbiting around it, that are separate places where as you say, you're completely right, you need to have advocacy. The Bitcoin Core technical community in Bitcoin Core makes decisions by consensus. They talk until everyone agrees, but you cannot find the truth that way. You have to find it in something contentious and prediction market-like, where people take sides and they do battle over something that's clearly defined, and then one side wins.
Yeah, because it just sounds like a bunch of jackasses pontificating, and then it's like you said, people don't want to disagree because they don't want to look bad.
Yes,
and there's
people
no cost
who
disagree. For being wrong.
There's no skin in the game. So it's one of many ironies of Bitcoin.
It's not a free market,
and definitely the core, I do think the Bitcoin conversations have gotten a lot dumber. There used to be a case where all the smartest people were in Bitcoin, and that has been declining a lot. And then when you have something like Chris DeRose saying that he sort of doesn't consider himself a member of the community anymore, that is, I think, quite a blow. And probably few people will agree with me, but I think that is quite a statement about the state of the Bitcoin world.
It's interesting. Well, I got to get going, guys, but it's been an interesting conversation. I love to. We don't really get to talk about prediction markets and gambling on the show very often, so it definitely is deep subject.
Yeah,
it goes. Yes, especially when you consider what the world's going through right now. A lot of people don't know what to expect and are, over time it's gotten better and better for prediction markets crowd, because you have like the post-truth era and you have like the fake news era, and now people are like, what do we do? What do we do? Do we just stop listening to everyone? And then it's like, aha, we have this thing that I think will work.
In particular, if I can just say one final thing, it's a question of scale. Well, back when you had a few newspapers, everyone could read all of them and write letters to the editor for all of them. But now when you have 300 million people living in one country, you have no way of knowing what they're all saying about everything. But markets do better when there's more people. The more people participating, looking at the market, the more liquid it is, the more trading it is. So it's just a question of scale, actually. It's just too many people talking. So you need something where, like a market, it says, this is what we currently expect. And then if people disagree with it, they make edits to it. They move the price around until it's something that, again, most people are satisfied with.
Yeah, maybe if enough people put money down on the outcome of coronavirus, then something will happen, and we'll come to a solution.
Or maybe we can just have reputation like they're doing in China, and if you lose reputation, you can't get on a plane or something like that.
Or something. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for coming on the show.
Paul. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
It'd be cool to have you on in the future to talk about one specific aspect of everything that you talked about, like maybe a particular market, or
there's quite a bit. There's a lot on that one question the issue you just raised about how to get the initial liquidity and stuff like that. So I have a lot about that.
So where can people find your stuff?
Well, that project is now on bitcoinhivemind.com. My blog is truthcoin.info. They all link to each other. I have truthcoin.info, drivechain.info, and bitcoinhivemind.com. So DriveChain is about the sidechains project, and Bitcoin Hivemind is about prediction markets and decentralized Oracle system. And then I'm Truthcoin on Twitter.
Sweet. We'll have all that in the show notes.
All right, great. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a good night. Stay safe.